Okay, so today we're talking about Arkansas explorers and settlers. We're starting with DeSoto, who he and his men were the first European clash with Native Americans that happened inside the area of what we now know as Arkansas. So through this, when I say Arkansas, obviously Arkansas wasn't a state at the time; it didn't have the borders that it has now. But I'm referring to the area that we now know as Arkansas. Um, the natives saw his European weaponry as superior to anything that they had. And as DeSoto is making his way here, he clashes with a number of different tribes. Now, some of those meetings were peaceful, some of them were actually clashes. So one of those was in Alabama, in Tuscaloosa, where Native American casualties were about 3,500 to DeSoto's 22. So they're not necessarily peacefully meeting tribes. They are barreling through with weapons as needed. So that's a thing. The Native Americans used what they did have to their benefit, which was guerrilla warfare. They knew the land, and these Europeans did not. So they were able to do some sneak attacks and to fight back in that way. The Chickasaws, especially, were really effective in that way. And they were the only tribe to have stories of DeSoto. Other tribes didn't write stories down. Hey, come on in.
So,
Hey, we're talking about DeSoto's exploration into Arkansas. Yeah. So the Chickasaw had stories that they passed down. Those were oral stories that they passed down from generation to generation that actually recorded the fact that these Europeans had arrived. De Soto and his men had arrived. The other stories were omitted because we didn't have them collected by other tribes, and none of them were written down. So the thing that goes wrong with oral history when it's passed down, it's like that game telephone, where you whisper something to one person, it goes all the way around the room. By the time you end up with the story, you don't know how much of it is fact, how much of it has been exaggerated or added or deleted along the way. So we do know that the Chickasaw did meet um, and clash with DeSoto, but their guerrilla warfare tactics helped them out a lot. So DeSoto and his men were the first Europeans in Arkansas, and they met first around this area here near West Memphis. This is the kind of present day parking. Know that part of the state very well. Um, and these lines show what is kind of sort of accepted as Hernando de Soto's route through Arkansas. And I say Hernando de Soto kind of loosely because he died on the journey in 1541, somewhere between 41 and 42. He died. And they ended up dumping him pretty much into the Mississippi River. Because, what do you do with a body on a boat? I mean, you don't bury it where you're never going to return. So they put him at sea by dumping him into the Mississippi River. Um, Scholars still argue about this route. It's one of the things that if you get a group of Arkansas historians in a room together, not me, because I'm not invested in this, but there are scholars who focus on DeSoto and this, and they will fight. It'd be like a Thunderdome kind of battle. It would be really kind of fun to watch, actually. But the thing that they're fighting about is this journey. So some say he came here and did this thing, and then came out here. They dropped him in was it Lake Village, that area, into the river, and that they would just go down the river. But we have other stories that maybe show that he went to different areas down here. Then there are other people who say, no, he went here, he started here, and then he went up here. and then down the Little Rock, and then down to here, and then through there, and then they came back and dumped it. You know, so generally, what's usually accepted is that DeSoto himself never made it into the Arkadelphia-ish area, that his men made that trip. However, if you go to Arkadelphia, you'll see signs for DeSoto's Bluff, which is this nice little walking trail, kind of across from the old Pizza Hut, right on the highway. And it looks over the Washita River. It's really pretty. But that area is still kind of argued about. There are reasons that we think that, not necessarily just because different towns are like, ooh, we want to claim DeSoto came here or something. DeSoto's guys, as they're making the journey, they actually recorded landmarks because they didn't have town names like Arkadelphia or Malvern or whatever. So they recorded landmarks. And so people fight over what those landmarks are. And so that's always fun. Like that. Yeah.
I have two questions.
Sure.
So how did he die? Like this natural causes or these companies in?
It wasn't an injury, it was an illness.
Oh.
So yeah.
And then the other one was, can you go to number 2?
Yeah.
I want to see if he said, did them and the natives fight? Like when the natives from Arkansas saw him coming,
Did the natives from Arkansas fight?
Yeah.
So no, not initially. The people in Parkin welcomed him. They were a group of, I believe it was Tanaco, let's see. Yeah, the Tanaco tribe at Parkin. Welcomed him. He was exploring. It's not like he was, yeah, they weren't invading. And so the problem from those other troops came from, you know, basically to fight back. I mean, they could have just gone straight through.
Yeah.
Of course, they're Spanish, so they're always looking for what? Gold. They're always looking for, yeah, they're always looking for that. So, I mean, that would have been an issue along the way if they thought that they could rob somebody, or, you know, that would have been a thing too. But these are all the different names that were mentioned in the journals that the DeSoto people kept. One of them, and we'll look at these in a minute on another map, but two are, so these are Native American, and this is Spanish spelling of Native American words.
Yeah.
So my pronunciation is going to be bad, but Shagwat or Shagwate and Naguatex. So where do you think Naguatex is?
Oh, Texas? Oh,
Yeah, right. I mean, it's Texarkana, which blows my mind. Yeah. So here, Shagwatex, if I could blow that up. Is it on this map? Maybe it's on this. Yeah. Shagwate, or whatever we're calling it, is right here. And there's the Naguatex. Yeah. It was just kind of funny because Tex kind of stuck with it. Yeah. And the Shagwate, I mean, I hear Washita kind of in there.
Yeah.
You know, so like that kind of makes sense. But yeah, it's crazy. Those sites were mentioned, and so because they were mentioned, and these areas have been assigned with some sort of landmark in the past, then we get the idea that this route has some merit to it, you know. In the process, one guy actually stayed in Arkansas, Francisco de Guzman. Yeah, he decided to stay. He fell in love with a Native American woman and stayed here along the Washita River. Now, we don't know if he stayed here, like in Malvern, Arkadelphia. It could have been Canada. It could have been anywhere along the way. But the Washita River. So other than that one guy, de Guzman, other than him, it's another 140 years before another European is seen in this area. So
Great grandfathers.
great,
Yeah,
yeah, really. Yeah, however many greats that would be.
You stayed.
Chaguat, Chaguate, along the Washita River.
That's pretty. So you saw this place is pretty cool land, found them all of it,
Yeah, it's like, I think I'll stay.
set up shop, yeah.
And the funny thing about that is that in the 1500s, we don't think about love so much. I mean, a lot of medieval stories kind of romanticize things a lot, but love really, I mean, it was really reproduction for the most part. And then you had these court romances that would start that were forbidden between like a knight and a princess or queen or something like that. But in this way, maybe it's kind of similar. You have this European and a Native American. Maybe it's that forbiddenness that kind of.
That is true.
I mean, love, falling in love wasn't so much. I mean, people didn't get married then because they fell in love. They got married then for upward mobility or stability. So, but yeah, he stayed, which is kind of interesting. He chose to stick around. So, yep. Then in the 1600s, we have Marquette and Gillette. And I love the fact that these are French names and we don't say Marquet and Gillette. I mean, but Marquette and Gillette. They were both French. Father Marquette was a missionary. He was also a fur trader because most Canadians were, and he was French living in the area that we now know as Canada, but he moved into Indian country, which would have been more like along the Great Lakes region of the United States now that we know.
Like Blackfoot tribes and stuff, is that where they are?
Well, so the Blackfoot tribe would have been further like toward Washington.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we're talking about center United States, up around like Lake Michigan and Lake Erie and all of that stuff. So he and Gillette was also a fur trader. They wanted to find the mouth of the Mississippi River. They hoped that it would flow into the Pacific because they were looking for a trade network that would flow to the other ocean. And they did not find that it flowed to the Pacific. But they did learn that it flowed south. They did not go all the way to the Gulf on the Mississippi River because the Quapaw warned them when they reached Arkansas. So the Quapaw people were largely peaceful. And they would fight, especially if threatened, but
that's how most of the Americans did.
Yeah, I mean, it's
pretty peaceful.
Right, because they didn't see things as our land.
Yeah.
They saw it as, the land, right, and it was to be shared. And so, but when they see weapons that are bigger than anything they've got, then it's like, whoa, what's happening here? So, yeah, the thing that the French always did really well was made relationships with Native Americans. And those French relationships with the Native Americans led to expanded trade routes for both groups. And it always helped the French a great deal. And so because they had good relationships with Native Americans, and we know Native Americans had trade networks set up. Did we talk in the last unit about Cahokia?
Well, that's I got that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we didn't go into that. So there's a major Native American trade network that developed um, one with the rivers for sure, but two up around the area that's now St. Louis,
Okay.
that Cahokia or Cahokia um, was a big community trading point that lots of different Native American tribes went to trade. So um, the French were really important in developing those routes. And most importantly, the Native Americans were really important to the French because they already had those routes developed and they showed them to the French and welcomed them in for trade. They wanted to trade with French. French had different things. And who doesn't like stuff?
Sure.
I mean, most of history is about stuff and getting more stuff and different stuff and new stuff and getting rid of old stuff. And one of the things, are you familiar with the show, The Treasure at Oak Island?
No, I mean, but I've seen a few episodes.
So,
I
yeah.
haven't watched it.
They have this thing, they're searching for hidden treasure that they think existed from um, the Knights of Malta, which was,
Oh,
yeah, like the Knights Templar, but yeah. And
Crusade era.
yeah, and so they're finding these little things, these little beads that were French beads that were traded with the natives that lived there on the island years ago. It's like, so anything was, I mean,
For real.
things have value if you assign it value. You know, we have money that we assign value to all the time, but then it was anything, beads, cloth, little pieces of silver or gold or whatever. So the Quapaw were the ones who met Marquette and Gillette. And if you remember the map that was split into three, the Quapaw had that largest section kind of on the eastern part of the state. So as they're coming down from the Mississippi, they meet the Quapaw, and they're the ones who actually called the Quapaw the Arkansas. And so for that reason, the river and the region in general started becoming known as Arkansas. Yeah, because of the French. Yeah. Yeah. And the Quapaw was like, hey, we know that you want to go and see where this takes you, but you know, hear me out. There's some people down south that are going to fight you. I want to say it's the Tunica. Now, when we think of Tunica, or when I think of Tunica, I think of like West Memphis area because that's where the city of Tunica is. You know, where all of the casinos were at one time, maybe still are. But there was a tribe of Tunica at the southern end of the state, northern part of Louisiana, that they would have run into that the Quapaw warned them about. Said, look, they're going to kill you. You know, you really want to do that? And they're like, no, no. So they went back. They're like, no, we don't want to do that.
Where was Apache? Is that like near California or like a little bit more central in California?
Yeah, you know, where was Apache? Let me look.
Not to be like central, and like smack dab in the middle.
Okay, there we go. Is that right? Of southwestern US and northern Mexico. So part of Texas. Yeah. Apache territory. The Blackfeet that you were talking about are up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the Great Lakes region with Marquette and Gillette. Okay. We go back to these.
It'd be crazy being native like around well, I guess around like the Great Lake. Those guys are just like on the like up near there. Like I know in Montana they have guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be crazy. See.
It'd be crazy. And just the lake effect so in that area too would be
Yeah.
major stuff. So so that's in 1673 that we have the French coming through. We have more French coming through just a few years later in 1682. We're going to call this guy LaSalle. He's got a big long name. Rene Robert Cavalier Sieur de LaSalle. And Sieur de LaSalle basically means Sir from LaSalle. So his family was pretty prominent, and so he had this title, Sir. So we call him LaSalle. History remembers him as LaSalle. So LaSalle was also French and part of the French expedition. He came down from New France, which is the area we call Canada today. And that's got it backwards on the slides. It says New Canada. It was New France, but it's Canada today. He brought 23 Frenchmen with him, and he had 31 Native Americans because the French still doing what French do best, developing relationships with Native Americans for these trade routes. They had 10 women and 3 kids, all various tribes, not all one tribe. And so they were allied with the French. It was important for them to have this kind of conglomerate of people on the trade route, or as they're exploring this potential trade route, because they wanted to show that they could get along with a lot of different people. And that, you know, this tribe liked them, this tribe liked them. They weren't up to no good because they brought women and kids. You know, you're not going to take women and kids if you expect to war or battle. So they wanted to be accepted. They had no intention of expanding territory. What they really wanted to do was extend the trade route. So while this mission is not meant for expansion of France or New France in any kind of way, LaSalle does meet the Quapaw and smokes the calumet pipe with them. And he thinks that they have made some sort of arrangement through that. So it's a communication breakdown. He thought it was a trade treaty. They were like, you're our brother now, you know, kind of thing. So LaSalle takes the opportunity and is like, oh, we had this trade treaty. Well, I'm just going to declare the Mississippi River Valley for France. Well, the Mississippi River Valley is a large area. So if you think about that, the length of the Mississippi and the valley that goes with it, he's like, yeah, France owns that. So in 1684, LaSalle decides to colonize the river valley and gets permission from France to do so, because he's gone back and he's told the French, you know, hey, told the king, I've claimed this for us, and now we can colonize it. So he convinces France to send colonists back. The problem is, when he came to it the first time, he came down from Canada. So he went to France to convince them, and they send French people back with him. So now he's got to find the same area from a different route. So he's coming from the Gulf up instead of from Canada down.
So he's not long coming from New France, he's coming from like
France.
the homeland.
He's coming from France, from sure enough France. And he gets lost.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So instead of finding the mouth of the Mississippi, he ends up at the Texas Gulf Coast. So he's missed it. And he went too far. Yeah. And so the Native Americans that he encounters there, you know, kill him. So there were a few that escaped. And one of those three that escaped was his brother. So LaSalle got killed. Yeah. For, you know, overshooting. Yeah. So there were 3 survivors that traveled from Texas then into Arkansas, basically kind of referring to that old DeSoto plan. You know, how do we get back where DeSoto was? You know, we know he was dumped into the Mississippi. How do we get to that? And so they start kind of tracing methods and knowing about the Washita and the other rivers that DeSoto went through. They use some of those to kind of gain wits about them to get back into a territory that they can maneuver through. So they end up in Washington or in Arkansas. Um, Jean Cavalier, LaSalle's little brother, is one of those three. Um, so Arkansas Post, when all of this was going down, LaSalle, the big brother, met with his expedition partner DeTonti, and they set up this trading post at a place along the river. They called it Arkansas Post. So Arkansas Post still exists today. It's a federally protected area. I don't know if it's a state park so much, but it's a federal park or something. Yeah. So they set up this little area because they want some point between Illinois and the Mississippi River that they can stop, kind of gain supplies if they need it, take a breath, regroup, whatever, and then head on. So Arkansas Post is meant to become an important trading point along the river. But at the time, DeTonti leaves 6 men there to watch for LaSalle's return. And at that point, they'll start kind of populating the area. Yeah, right. They're going to live in that area. Tonti also used the post to establish trade with the Quapaw. So while he's there, he's got to have supplies. Those 6 guys he's leaving behind have to have supplies. Again, they're French. They've got good relationships with Quapaw. And so that kind of works out okay for those 6 guys who are left there. Arkansas Post was always small. It never really grew. Wasn't really meant to grow substantially, but it was always meant to be a stopping point along the way. But the 3 guys get there, and so there are 6 men waiting for them. At the time, Arkansas Post was the only European established settlement west of the Mississippi River. So it was important for that reason too. It gave the French that stopping point along the way. And it gave little brother Cavalier a chance to kind of get his bearings and find people again. They did not settle the area, so they kind of moved on from there, especially after losing most of it. You got to think about that. The French allowed and kind of funded that settlement. So you'll lose most of your people. There's no reason to settle. You just go on back to New France. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't mention Moscoso earlier. I need to mention him. So when DeSoto died, his next in charge took over. That was Moscoso. So if you see Moscoso's name pick up, he was the one who was in charge after DeSoto died. So after they pushed him over, Moscoso takes over. He was a ladybug here. Of all things, it's, we've had ice and snow and there's a ladybug in here. Go figure. So the next French person important to Arkansas settlement was La Harpe, Jean Bernard La Harpe. He explored the Red River and that area into eastern Oklahoma. So western Arkansas and eastern Oklahoma. And he established a trading post and a garrison, so a fort, in the bend of the Red River called St. Louis. And he called it St. Louis de Catodoches for the Caddo who lived along the river. So the Caddo were in that area as well. La Harpe led the first expedition from France up the Arkansas River to Morrilton. So you'll see a lot of Harpe and La Harpe names through that area for that reason. So a big French influence. And we had the first explorers were Spanish, and then we have de Guzman who stayed along. And then 140 years later, we had the French showing up. But the Spanish were kind of like that. I mean, the Spanish settled what we now know as St. Augustine, Florida. It was a settlement, or they claimed it for Spain, and then nobody lived there. It just kind of kept going. So then they start thinking, well, we need to settle this, or all of these colonists are going to start coming down and trying to take our land. So Florida belonged to the Spanish for a long time, even though it was largely unsettled by them, because they're looking for the riches and moving on.
So eventually, like, did they just get bored? Or like, did they, I know they like kind of took over even Mexico and all that, developed it, I guess. But like, the British came here eventually, or what is now us.
Yeah.
So like, did they ever clash, or did they just, Mexico or the Spanish just got bored before the English got here?
So there were times when we had.
I only have 6 years still.
Yeah, we had Florida was a Spanish colony for a long time. We're getting ready to talk about that in U.S. history, so I think it's funny that it's kind of coming up here too. But at one point, the area that now we know as Pensacola, kind of the panhandle of Florida, some British people like move into that area, and they're like, well, we're just gonna declare ourselves independent from Spain.
Yeah.
And so the United States was like, okay, well, we'll support that.
Yeah.
And so they recognized their independence, and then Spain had been at war with France.
This is all post.
Yeah. Spain had been at war with France, and it had been costly. And so we acquired
That extra.
Florida from, yeah.
How long after that did we get California?
So, year-wise, look,
They've always been right here. Like, take
Yeah.
these soldiers left.
yeah, right, everything, and it's amazing that they're okay. So we got Florida in 1821, and California, and so 20 years, 27 years.
And so we just, that time we went over, like, we were taking California, Mexico, either beat it or get whooped.
Well, so both were treaties, like the Adams-Onis treaty was Florida, and
Oh,
also part of the area that is now like Washington, that area, or Oregon, Washington, had been Spanish property that was owned along with Great Britain. And in the Adams-Onis treaty, the United States got the Spanish portion of that. So then we co-owned an area with Great Britain.
yeah.
So that's why eventually we developed that line that separates the US from Canada, which is, and that area is still like a British section of Canada, still there today. It's like Victoria, is it Victoria? I think Victoria, Canada.
Was it still, like back then, was it British or
Yeah.
or was it French? Okay.
Yeah, that section. And so Canada is still kind of split. There's a British section and a French section of Canada. Although it's unified as a
all Canada is just like a mix of French and British people.
Kind of, mostly French. Yeah. So that's why Harry and Meghan, when they left their titles in England, the first place they went was into British, British Columbia, BC, in Canada.
Yeah.
So they went to that region where they still had some sort of, where Harry still had some sort of citizenship, you know, before coming here. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird to think about, but we don't think about Canada a lot. Yeah.
The only one usually talk about that is why they're too nice. People think they're up to something.
Oh, really? There's suspicion. Canada's sus, is that what I'm hearing?
Right now, people just think they're too nice.
So I hear lots of things about Canada these days, like one of the things that Canada has done is they created these drug treatment facilities where instead of like the rehab that we think of, like a detox center, you actually go there and you get drugs administered to you in a professional setting. So if you overdose, you're there, and so they can take care of you.
Well, that's great healthcare.
And so, you know, that there's also a big drug problem in Canada, parts of Canada.
Kind of controversy stuff. Yeah, you can come here and we'll give you drugs, just so
Yeah.
you don't think you die in a safe space, but.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm working from this long.
Yeah.
They actually had a long ones and then you can't throw loose out of that.
Okay, well, that would be a good thing not to do for sure.
Yeah, and it was there was a tradition.
Obviously, anytime there's a law, somebody has done something. So, yeah. So Arkansas Post remained relevant throughout the French time here. And sometimes it would move because it's flooding. It was so close to the river. Sometimes it moved upstream, sometimes it moved downstream. Most of the time it wasn't occupied by many people. Sometimes it wasn't occupied at all, but it was always there, a little more. Right now, the position it's in has been its current position since 1779. So since then, it had another group tried to settle Arkansas Post, and this group was John Law from Scotland actually got permission from the King of France to recruit colonists to settle the Arkansas Post area. So he wanted to be able to provide land for these people because they had to be able to farm to take care of themselves and all of that stuff. So the King of France said, sure, we'll do that, we'll charter that. And John Law brings these people to reestablish Arkansas Post. Some of the people who built that post were indentured servants. In terms of indentured servants, that's generally somebody who has a fine to work on. And so the people who couldn't afford to come here but wanted to come here would say, you know, we'll work for you for a certain amount of time in order for our passage to this new opportunity. So some of them did that. There were also some slaves that came to Arkansas Post, but I haven't included them here just yet.
What kind of slaves?
Like African slaves that
They brought here from Portugal. I think.
So they end up coming. Now they're not with John Law, I don't think. Double check. Okay, so we get some slaves here in 1723. So they came with some of the colonists who decided to settle Arkansas. But they didn't come as part of this. Yes. Yeah. So by the early 1720s, 1720s, the population was up to 47, which was a lot for the time. I mean, 47, they had a doctor, they had an apothecary. What's an apothecary, y'all?
Someone who studies medicine and also
Yeah,
maintains.
medicine. It's like a pharmacist, you know, yeah.
Illegal.
But yeah, without the
License.
legal license that we would require today. So
And all
there are
that.
people who mix herbs and, you know, an herbal doctor kind of thing. They had a military commander, but most of them were indentured servants who did the work because nobody wanted to do the work. And you had these people who wanted an opportunity, but couldn't afford it. So who does that sort of thing? Who signs up to be an indentured servant to come work to settle a new territory? Who does that?
Slaves.
Well, yeah, okay, so slaves weren't given an option, but so people who did that were usually like, you guys know how inheritances worked in the old countries, in France and England, like the oldest son got everything, and then other sons were at the mercy of the oldest. So if, you know, your brother felt obligated or loved you enough, then you might be included in the family's will, if it could happen. But sometimes there's not a lot of wealth to pass down. Sometimes there's just a little land, and you know, if the oldest son gets it, then what do the youngest do? A lot of times they enter priesthood, or they try to become a merchant or whatever. So now they have a new opportunity to own land, and so that's why a lot of people came, for just the sheer opportunity to own something on their own and to make their own way. But by 1722, John Law was bankrupt. So it cost a lot to set up a settlement. So no more colonists arrived. The servants, the indentured servants, were allowed to stay to hunt and trade. They were released from the contract because nobody else wanted to stay to put up with it. So we had some French living in Arkansas, French and Scottish, technically, living in Arkansas in the early 1700s or early 1720s, just because of this failed colony. By 1723, the population was down to 20. Some of those people left, some of those people died. You know, we went from 47 to 20. There were 6 slaves there at this point. So someone who came into the colony, or to the, I'm calling it a colony, into the settlement, brought slaves with them. So these were the first African slaves there in 1723. Then the colony gets abandoned. Some of those slaves are taken back with them to wherever, you know, their owners went. Some were simply released. So in 1723 now we have some Scotsmen, we have some Frenchmen, and we have some freed Africans living in the area, just here, you know, and living alongside the Native Americans. So France reestablished again the port in 1731, and it remained open through the colony years. The big products around that area were bear oil, which was used for cooking. It's used to repel mosquitoes. It was used for rheumatoid arthritis, rheumatism, whatever you want to call it. Bear oil was a big thing. And then the furs that would have come with that. So bear in terms of oil and furs. Do you guys know the town Bearden? Have you guys heard of Bearden,
Yeah.
Arkansas? So if you look at Bearden, it's spelled, it's right. It's Bearden. Bearden. You know, as we do, we push words together. So that area especially was known for being full of bear. We had a lot of bear. We actually depleted the resource like we did with deer, and then we brought deer back. You know, so we've slowly been bringing bears back as well. So in 1798, there were 56 slaves at Arkansas Post.
Oh, because
Yeah,
English guys came.
yeah. So now we've got trade going on, and we've got bear. So now we have some folks that are staying around the area. We do have slaves back, and most of them were Africans. Some of them were Native Americans.
How did that happen?
So as colonists would, so people who are coming here are coming from other places. They're not necessarily like leaving a foreign country and coming here now. They're coming from what we now know as the United States. They're coming from the eastern part and just kind of coming over. The French kind of sort of also had slaves. Native Americans had slaves in
But
some
Native
instances, and some Africans. So
They didn't have a way to buy them, did they?
it's about stealing or
Oh,
kidnapping.
I
You know,
guess.
I guess would be a better term for people, right? So you take a resource that somebody else wants if you know, are fighting. Sometimes you win them in battles, you know, that kind of thing. So, anyway, so yeah, we had some slaves in the area who were Native Americans as well.
There was one,
Yeah,
two. Seven degree yachts. Marauders or whatever, Louise, Juliet, you know.
oh yeah, back up
Before
here.
that, like, in DeSoto, Kansas, Arkansas, what you.
Okay, that's gonna be 1500s. So 1514, or I'm sorry, 1541, not 1514.
That's not.
Yeah, yeah. So it didn't take long for him to die. I mean, that expedition started and he died during it, so.
Expedition lifestyle.
It's rough, right? I mean, it's gotta be rough.
Seems fun, very short.
Yeah, it's fun to read about, but I'm not a camper. I can't imagine being on a boat for long periods of time.
True, no shower.
Yeah, no, yeah. And the mosquitoes had to be bad.
Especially.
Yeah, and that was something that Arkansas Post really had to deal with. And that's why the area of Crowley's Ridge became so popular, you know, because it's a little bit higher and away from the swampy mosquitoes. In 1802, Arkansas Post got up to a total of 400 people, almost 400 people. And there were 5 languages that were being spoken in that area. Can you imagine the multicultural diversity in that area? Yeah. So you had France, Germany, Spain, English, and the Quapaw as well. So it's very racially diverse. There were
All my DNA right there.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, from Arkansas. Yeah, maybe from Arkansas Post. And honestly, a lot of folks, you know, from this time period. So there were lots of interracial marriages, and most were Quapaw women with French men. You didn't really hear a lot of Native American men marrying, you know, the other women. And part of that is because men were the ones who came to settle. I mean, you know, there were women when they got here. They didn't bring women with them always. Sometimes women came with them. But yeah. Sometimes those marriages, marriage is the term that we give it today because it's the term we use to understand those kinds of relationships. But sometimes, like with, and we'll talk more about them in the next unit when we start talking about like the Louisiana Purchase and stuff. But Sacagawea and her husband, I mean, he bought her. She was purchased by him. and then he considered her his wife. So like, so don't put a lot of stock into this whole, there was no, wedding cake and nobody exchanged rings or anything, but they're living together in a family unit as husband and wife. As a trading post, Arkansas Post brought a lot of Native Americans to the area. And so that gives a chance for all of these other cultures to interact with Native Americans other than just the Quapaw. So lots of people are coming, and they're coming for trade, which makes it a lot better. It's a better way to meet people than, say, taking a ship of people into someone's territory and meeting them unexpected. Like trade.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, welcoming them to your area for trade is better than like Marquette and Gillette,
Yeah.
who refused to go south because they heard the story from the Quapaw about the mean tribe that was down south. So, you build a nice place and they can be with the expectation of trade on the terms that you said and the rules that you said. So much better situation involved. People who are from mixed Native American and European descent were called Metis, or it's referred to as Metis. It was very rare for two Metis to marry. So, like, if you had, yeah, very rare for two mixed people to marry at the time. Now, what's happening elsewhere, like in the Appalachians, there's a lot of the same kind of thing where there are lots of interracial marriages between the Europeans, between the British, between the Native Americans, and free blacks. So they're all in the hills, and because
Hillbilly
but because of their multiracial qualities, they are not accepted by the very close in proximity, very European people who are very white. So, yeah, so they're being kind of pushed aside. And so they're living a secluded life in the mountains so that they won't be harassed.
It seems like I've heard that.
Yeah.
For
the Appalachian.
Early people in Appalachian.
Yeah. The term is Melugeon, and they're not sure where the name came from, except they think maybe it might be connected to the French term mélange, which means mixed. So, which kind of makes sense, but a lot of those people could be white passing. And some of them passed as Native Americans. It's hard to get a good census from that area because don't know if everybody was. So with all of this stuff going on with French, and the French were pretty successful in Arkansas. Spain is like, we went through there first. So we should have some sort of trading post too, but we want our trading post also, we want it on the Washita River. We want it somewhere between Arkansas Post and Natchitoches. So they wanted to set up around the area that we now know as Camden. And so they tried that, but it ended up actually moving downriver. It's closer to Monroe, Louisiana, where that trading post is actually successfully set up. Not for any reason other than the fact that I think there just needed to be more space between the two posts. So it was more successful near Monroe, Louisiana than at Camden from Arkansas Post. Those two aren't very far apart. So moving it to Monroe made it an easier stop.
I guess they were well behaved by this point, by this late.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things is that you really want people to use your trading for it. Because, the French have proven to be pretty successful with the idea that there's less trouble if people are coming for good things.
To you, for good,
Yeah,
trying to raise you.
yeah, and you also put yourself at risk of being raided if you're replaced with the good things. So, there has to be a certain amount of law upkeeping for that to happen. Yeah. One of the things that's interesting about the Spanish port, so in 1795, the Spanish port was on the east side of the Mississippi River. So that would be the area that we now know as Mississippi. But we had also in 1795, Pinckney's Treaty, which set Mississippi as a boundary between Spanish Louisiana, because the Spanish are in control of Louisiana at that point, and the United States.
Along with Florida?
Yeah. So at this point, Spain has Florida and Louisiana. Yeah. Yeah. So now it's on the wrong side of the Mississippi River, so they have to move it. So they move it across literally to what is now Crittenden County. The port, the Spanish port. So it's like they gotta just move it across the river. Yeah. Well, because the treaty said that everything Spanish was to the left of the Mississippi River and their port was just to the right of it. So they were able to maintain friendly relations, not just with the United States, which is starting to grow and starting to set boundaries, but with the Native Americans and the French, so everyone's kind of getting along at that point.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. And, the one thing about the human condition, we're all humans want things, and some people want more things than others. So if these people got to a point where they could be content, then we know that there are going to be people coming along who want more. And that's going to change all of this. But the US wanting more is what changed their port to begin with. Well, we recognize you own that, but you don't have to own it
On the other
the
side.
other side. You can't own this side. So, we're already starting to see in 1795 that we were pushing to the west. From the beginning, when the colonists landed in the east, they started pushing west immediately. And, initially that is like, oh, this tribe has to be pushed back, push back. And now by 1795, we're at the Mississippi River, pushing back. And so pretty soon with the Adams-Onis treaty that comes along in the 1800s that we talked about, that, then we start using the Rio Grande River as a border, and then it's just crazy. It's just really ramping up at that point. But we have French and we have Spanish heritage in Arkansas. You can see that reflected in some of the names around here, like the community in Bismarck, DeRoche community. DeRoche community is French for the rock. So it's a little rocky area. The rock, yeah. And Little Rock was like La Petite Rocher, something like that. So Little Rock, yeah. Right? The Little Rock. And
what about Baldwin? I mean, that sounds really just Southern and American, but like that's so weird.
Does, yeah. And so I'm thinking, since the location of that is going to have and
like smack over. What do you mean?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not sure about smack over. Okay, this is named after a natural landmark, a large barren or bald outcropping of stone, visible from the White River. So, okay. I spelled tobacco wrong, but thank goodness it knows what I want. Covered in sumac. Right. Yeah. Especially if you're allergic to it. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. From a French,
description,
yep. Yeah. So that's cool. There are lots of French names and stuff.
So much French influence in Arkansas.
Yeah.
I knew like Southern America, like when Louisiana.
Right. And Louisiana still maintains a lot of, like, they don't have counties like we do, they have parishes. That's a very, yeah. So that's a holdover from French organization. So, and they also very unique cultures with,
Yeah, like the Creole.
yeah, the Creole
Yeah.
culture there that,
Okay.
yeah. And the mix of like the Slavic Europeans who settled there and married into the Native Americans and the French, and
When they come on St.
so it's kind of the Creole culture. So yeah, as people are coming there, you know, this culture, really rich culture, begins to develop. So
It's like from Slovakia.
yeah,
Wow.
so opportunity, yeah, a chance to try something new, to get land ownership. So land ownership was a big deal, and we kind of moved away from that. I still see it a lot in our region because we're kind of, we're going to call us a rural region, even though we're not super country, but we could be if we wanted to be, you know. We still have people here who look at land ownership as wealth opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, like, I just got to own a piece of land. Like, why? You just got to own it. But it's kind of a holdover from the this time period.
So I've never thought about why I thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to have land. We got to have it. A little piece, yeah. And now we're seeing more young people stray away from that idea. With, you know, why do you want land? It's just an extra responsibility.
That's how most people like they just want to bring it, they
Yeah.
don't have to do.
Yeah. So my generation is taught you throw the money away if you rent, you give it to someone else. You could pay that and own your own property. Like, oh, congrats, I'm the one replacing that water heater every time it messes up, or the roof whenever it leaks or whatever. But yeah, I mean, so we have a shift culturally that's happening as things change and as technology improves and all of that. So it'll be interesting to see what people are talking about, you know, 100 years from now about the things we do today. So in your modules, there's something that I need you guys to take a look at on your own. If I posted it, but yeah, okay. There is this little article about French explorers and early settlers that's going to review a little bit about what we talked about today. It goes into a little more depth, but it still talks about the same people that we talked about today. And then also there is this little piece that I thought you guys might find interesting about Colbert's raid or Colbert's raid, depending on how you choose to pronounce it. Colbert was a British sympathizing, or he was a British man who sympathized with Native Americans. And since he was British, we generally say Colbert. French pronunciation would be Colbert. And Arkansas Post was loaded with French around the time. So please read that. It's really kind of interesting because it outlines the one and only Revolutionary War battle that we had in Arkansas, and it happened at Arkansas Post. Really kind of accidentally. And legitimately after the Revolutionary War ended. But news traveled slowly back then. You know? Didn't know it, you know. Here we are. We're battling this out for nothing, you know, but they didn't know. So that's an interesting thing.
For old times' sake.
Yeah, yeah, right. So Thursday in class, We'll have a writing activities. We'll have a few more notes to go over too by then. But I want us to look at a current event that I will give you guys in class to talk about. It's history related and it's Arkansas related. So that kind of works out for this class. But have you guys heard about, do you guys know what revisionist history is? Okay. It's about, when you have a revisionist view of something, it means you kind of look at it with a different narrative or an angle. Yeah. And so revisionist history is looking at history through different angles. And so we are hearing more about revisionist history these days. And we had an incident in Arkansas that came up. I'll share that with you guys on Thursday and talk about it in class and want you guys to write a little something about it. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, y'all. We finished a little bit early. Not too early, though. Yep, and I will stop recording.
Yeah, the thing, everyone's gonna be hearing the first part later.
I didn't record. Oh, yeah, I'll
You'll have to
stop that.
Yeah, you left the